Thank you for tuning in to the Real Tea with T3. My name is Tesia Harris, and I'm going to be your host today. I'm also the team leader of Texas Trio Team, and I have an awesome counterpart with me. Who are you?
I'm Deanna Kenisell.
Hey, and what do you do?
I'm a team member.
Awesome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into a really important topic for our viewers today. And so we'll introduce you to our guest. Who are you, and what keeps you busy these days?
Sure. My name is Shane Nelson. I'm the owner and attorney of Bluebonnet Abstract Title here in Brenham and a few other locations.
And so we're going to dive into a really important topic as to wire fraud and things that consumers, whether on the buy or sell side or just the general public, need to be looking out for. So tell us, all the insight that you've got.
Sure. Well, there's kind of two types of fraud. One is wire fraud that can affect the seller or the buyer. And then the other one is seller impersonation fraud, right? Somebody trying to sell a property that's not there. So I can give a couple examples for both of them, give some best practices for both of them, and how a buyer and seller can kind of be aware, and then realtors can be aware of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, that's a really good. Before you go into it, are you seeing a massive shift as far as with AI and things that they can adapt? The things that are adapting a lot more quickly than they were.
So with real estate industry and the title industry, the number one risk is fraud, seller fraud and wire fraud. And that's being accelerated with AI and technology. And, a long time ago, it was a little easier to see the email from a rich prince in Nigeria who wants to help you out. Now it's very, very hard to differentiate good emails and bad emails, good wire instructions, bad wire instructions. A lot of that is kind of accelerated with AI.
Yeah. So, kind of walk us through the shift of what you noticed when you started noticing it versus in comparison to where we are today.
Sure. Well, we started Bluebonnet about 5 years ago. The first couple of years, we weren't really seeing a whole lot of issues. In the last couple of years, the fraud issues have increased. I'll give you a couple examples. Two seller impersonation fraud issues. These are typically found whenever it's a vacant land, nobody's living on it. You have the owner who's out of state, and you also have it where the listing agent may have never met the seller in person. And so in those examples, it's very hard, at least on the front end, to determine is the person you're talking to the owner of the property or not. But you really have no idea till you go further along in the process. And so in at least two examples I can recall right now, and we've had contracts. One example, and I'm not going to give all the details on the names, but one example, vacant land in Washington County. Contract, listing agent never knew or met the seller. They had a contract. It was an offer. Let's say it's $1 million property. But the listing agent, the seller only won about $700,000. It was undervalued. It was underpriced for the value. That's an initial red flag. We get a contract. We start working on the property. We do the title commitment. The surveyor goes out there, starts surveying as he should, and the neighbor starts asking questions. What are you doing here? Why are you surveying? Blah, blah, blah. Kind of find out he knew that the seller wasn't selling. And so we started doing kind of a couple of extra checks. The listing agent starts doing a couple of extra checks. Seller disappears. So that's an example of, somebody trying to sell a property that wasn't theirs. In that example, they also wanted a quick close. They wanted a rush close. They were listing it at below market value, and they actually were wanting to take an offer even below the value that they wanted. So all these kind of little yellow flags, red flags, was kind of triggering for us and the agent, and thankfully that transaction canceled. The other one that kind of jumps out at me, Grimes County, we have, again, a vacant lot, out of state owner. They reach out, or individual reaches out to the listing agent, and they list the property. We actually got a lot farther in the process on that one. IDs can be forged, so we look at IDs. They look good. It's hard to kind of determine that. Before we started to, at the end, get the closing process finished, they were trying to use their own notaries. One of the rules and titles, we do not let somebody use their own notary just to prevent fraud. And we were having trouble coordinating with them using our notaries. They kept on changing it. Stuff started kind of getting a little fishy. Slowed it down. We started doing a little more investigation. And to come to find out, They're not the real owners. We were able to contact the real owners, and then that kind of transaction canceled. We ended up selling with the real owners about 3 or 4 months later because they did wanted to sell. So we have different at Bluebonnet. We have different procedures where if it is a vacant land, if it is out of state seller, we try to do these little verifications. We send letters to the owner for a CAD, and if with certain kind of passwords, and if we don't get that same password from the address of record, it's a potential fraudulent transaction. So that's kind of a 2 or 3 examples of seller impersonation fraud. I can go through a few factors where the listing agent and the seller and the buyer's agent can kind of help identify, and you're the agent is really that first one to see if there's issues. If there's smoke, there could be a fire. Have you met the person in like, I guess, have you met the seller in person? Do you know the person? If it's all done email, it raises the risk.
Yeah. And speaking of, like, I mean, when someone contacts us as realtors and say they want to sell their raw piece of property, it makes it really, challenging if they're maybe out of state or something like that. So what precautionary measures would you suggest, like for realtors that are getting these calls and requests to sell the property?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's hard, right? Out of state sellers can sell the property, and they oftentimes do. There are different verification, I think, ways that agents can do it. Simple thing like I suggested, whether the agent does or we do, send a letter to the registered address. If it's been the registered address for the last 3, 4, 5 years, send it to them. See if they respond, right? You can hire a PI to do a few other things to figure out the person, contact number, do some online searches to get a real number. And there's, it's not too hard and it's not expensive for you just to do a little bit of due diligence. Worst thing you can do is sell a property that the seller doesn't own, and you don't want to waste a lot of time and money, effort if it's never going to go to close.
When it sounds like in that first situation, the neighbors knew. So would you suggest us even like reaching out to the surrounding neighbors of the property?
I don't know if it makes sense every time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just
There's times there.
at times maybe so. Or if you're out there, just knock on a door or just be friendly and ask about it. But there's different things of again, another one where there was there's a property I think in Round Top. It was gated, and but an agent was talking to the seller, who wasn't the seller, and they reached out to HOA to get the keys to the gate or ask a question to the HOA, and the HOA, well, that person's not wanting to sell. And so there are some little easy checks that the agent or the title company can do just to help prevent that.
So let's just say, for instance, that does happen and it is identified whether by the realtor or the title company or an attorney involved. Like, I shouldn't necessarily say an attorney because they're going to know, but if that was to happen, what are the precautionary things that you do so the actual seller is aware, and also like so that fraudster is aware?
Great question. And unfortunately, we can only do so much. And there's a lot of fraudsters out there that never get caught.
Mm-hmm.
They change emails, change addresses, they change a burner phone. It's just hard to kind of track them down. We do report it to the local police department. We do report to our underwriter so they can let other title companies know that this property, these people were fraudulent. I know in some instances, the real owner will hire a lawyer and try to sue and go after this local person so they won't go after them again or do that to somebody else again. It's just very difficult to track them down because you only have so much information about the impersonator, and then they're gone.
Are there any like specific triggers as to the types of properties or the type, like demographically, that they're targeting the most to do this?
Yeah. So again, the 2 things that jump out at me is vacant land.
Mm-hmm.
And out-of-state owner, because you can do all these searches with AI or just databases, and you can do searches per county to figure out which properties have houses on or not, or have out-of-state owners or not. So it's fairly easy to figure out a list of properties that are vacant and out-of-state owners, and those are the easy targets. A couple other things are for flags. If it's a low-priced offer and they want to sell real quick, or they want to say, hey, give me money. I'll take a low offer. I want to close in a week. I want to close in 2 weeks. Why? Some just out of the ordinary. If you want to attend, you don't want to attend closing, but you want to do a remote closing. Again, that's fine. But then you want to use your own notary. You don't want to use somebody else's notary, right? That's another flag. Let's see here. A couple other things. Again, never doing a video conference. even you as an agent wanting to do a little, video or Teams or Zoom call, they never want to do anything where you can see their face. If it's only through text or email, that's another flag, right? And a lot of these flags are best identified by the agent way before the title company ever gets in. And so that's where, the agent, you're the best one to identify fraud, to protect your clients, protect the process. And if you have questions, talk to the lawyer, talk to a title company, figure out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. There's some other verifications that you can do on your end, but y'all really are, or the agent really is that best person to begin with to help, nip it in the bud.
Right. Okay. And so we've really dove into sellers and how this could be a pinpoint for them and how it can affect them. But what happens whenever it actually does go through?
Thankfully, it hasn't happened to us, and we've never had any claims yet. But that is a perfect example why you need title insurance, right? And so title insurance, does a lot of things. It helps kind of, we mitigate the risk. We identify all the issues on a property. We do full disclosure. We let everybody know what's going on. And then if everybody's okay with everything going on affecting the property, we close. One thing title insurance protects is unknown risk. It doesn't protect known risk. If we know about something, it generally doesn't protect it. If a buyer knows about something, it generally doesn't protect it. It protects fraud. It protects forged deeds. It protects against if there's an unknown heir or somebody else thinks that they own the property and they indeed own the property. I can give a lot of examples of this. Those unknown issues, including fraud or forged deeds, is something where that's what title insurance helps protect. And so the buyer, if there was an instance where, we're saying we sold the property, its seller didn't own it, who we gave money to, the buyer doesn't own the property because the right seller didn't sell the property to the right buyer, we have an issue. And the buyer, if everything else checks in theory, the buyer would be able to get all their money back with title insurance. If you did not have title insurance, the buyer would be screwed. That's an easy and perfect example why title company, even though sometimes is not necessary, the one time that you need it, you're going to want it. And that's why you use the title insurance or title company helps in some of those transactions.
100%. Yeah. Cause if you go, if you're looking at properties maybe online that may not be, that are not listed with a realtor, but they're for sale by owner or something like that, you could, if you're not using title insurance, you could really get yourself into a bind.
Yeah. So example, for sale by owner, nobody uses agents, nobody uses a title company, you just do a cash deed. You have no idea what you're getting. You have no idea what you're buying, the property, the acreage, restrictions, issues. Is it the right seller or not? You have no idea. And it's just not worth it.
Yeah. And there's other avenues that they're using too, to try and get people to buy properties and it looks really appealing. So on Marketplace, Craigslist, things like that. So you just have to be very mindful when you're searching online for proproperties.
Yeah, and generally if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Right. I mean, that applies to everything in life.
Right.
So we talked a lot about seller kind of impersonation fraud. The one thing we haven't talked about, we really don't see that on the buyer side, because if the buyer's willing to give me $500,000, $200,000, $1 million, they're not really trying to impersonate, right? So we really see the fraud on the seller side mostly, and that's what we're most concerned about. The other issue, though, is wire fraud. Wire fraud, affects everybody, even outside of title. Whenever you're sending money to the bank, you're sending money to whoever you're sending money to. You always have to worry about wire fraud, particularly in real estate transactions, because there's a lot higher money value, and title companies and agents and folks are doing that so much more. And that affects people on the buyer side as well as the seller side. A couple of examples on that. Whenever you use a title company, the buyer's typically sending the title company money for the purchase. Generally, that's done with wires, right? We and every other title company hand out wire instructions. Those wire instructions do not change. But there are, with AI and other, fraudulent, folks out there, they hack into emails, they impersonate emails, and those emails look very, very real. We have had a couple of instances where a lender will be hacked or a lender will be phished, and the lender, that's not the lender, but an email that appears to be from the lender is sent to the buyer and says, hey, we need this little bit of money. We can close early. Send this to us. That never, ever happens in the title world. Never happens in the real estate world. The money's always going to the title company. And in some instances, that money's sent to that wire account. Title company's never asked for it. Buyer has never asked their agent for it. And that's money's been lost and it's gone. And, feel awful for those folks, but that money can never get back, right? and no fault of the lender, no fault of us. It was just the buyer received an email that looked good, never verified with anybody. If he would have called the lender, would have called the agent, would have called the title company, I mean, that could have been avoided. And so you have to be very, very careful when you send a wire out. And so, whatever title company you use, you have to verify those instructions, call the title company to confirm that. Because if you send it to the wrong account, that money's gone.
When it's important to say too, don't call the number in the email.
That's right. Right.
Call the people that you've always been working with from the very beginning and those numbers. Try to make sure my clients know that, like, these are the people that you're going to be dealing with. You get an email, come back to this first email I sent you with their contacts. Never confirm it with something that's in the actual email.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And many agents, I think, even have like a little wire sheet or a little wire fraud sheet when they, have part of the process. Hey, do not send it, and it just protects everybody, right? Because if you didn't tell them, you're at higher risk. And so for the agent to let the buyer know how to do that, title company, every email we send out, our wire instructions say not to do that. But emails can look deceiving and they can be wrong. And so you have to verify it separately from the email, separate from you have either with your agent, or just Google and search the title company or somebody else online, or a number that you were given originally from day one.
Would you recommend, just like for any business owner that is doing like any kind of exchange of money, that they have some sort of disclaimer somewhere, or like, especially if it's like larger transactions?
For an agent, I mean, I think yes, but just, are you talking about like
Just a regular business owner, like what it's why?
If you're in the business of handling and receiving wires, yes. I mean, if you're a landscape company that you're not getting wires all the time, yeah, I don't think you need it. But if you're a company that you're receiving and sending out wires all the time, yeah, if you don't, you're at higher risk.
So should realtors have that on their email signature, or like where should be the spots that needs to be like loud and clear?
I think that's good. I think I don't know if the realtor needs to have it on every email that they have, but as part of the contract, whenever right before signing, or hey, whenever seeing your introduction email saying congratulations, and let the agent, let your client know immediately when you're sending earnest money instructions. A lot of those or earnest money issues for the contract, a lot of those are sent to us with a wire. And so, before the contract, have a listing, or not the listing agreement, but whenever you're writing an offer, I mean, the earlier you can tell the buyer that there is a potential fraud, or just be careful wire fraud, the better for you. And I think having like a little one sheet, disclaimer or something like that. And then it's easy. You're part of your little disclosure with them. When you send them this little wire sheet, you're covered. Right.
Right. And, this goes back. I remember a circumstance, and I think I've told you about it in the past, but just to let everybody know, this was back in like 2013. Had a fellow friend that is in real estate, and she went to the closing table. Buyer and seller were both there, and they were like, it's time to wire your proceeds. And they were like, I already did. And so that exact circumstance happened over a decade ago. And so I can't even imagine how much more sophisticated that it is.
Yeah, no, from 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, it's a whole night and day difference.
I'm sure even a year ago.
Yeah. The other thing is, once we whenever you send money to us, feel free to call to verify that we have received it. Sometimes if it goes to the wrong account, you might have 1 day or half a day to fix it. If it's past a day, you could be screwed. But there are different avenues. Not saying it works all the time, but if you send it to the wrong account, we have a couple of different contacts we can reach out to try to grab that money back. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, once you send money to us, definitely I would call to verify, and then we'll verify that. And our wire and bank accounts that we use are pretty real time, and we can let you know to have kind of peace of mind. Because if it's not there and it's out, we might have issue, or we can verify the instructions with us again just to make sure it went to the right spot.
Yeah. And you had said a few topics back. What is phishing? Like, for the people that don't know?
Phishing is, not fishing in the lake, but it's fishing with the P, kind of PHISING, I think. Don't hold me accountable to that.
Spelling bee.
Right. That's right. I went in third grade, but not since. And so we won't go back there. So phishing is a way that somebody essentially hacks in or follows your email and lurks and watches. And at the right time, they basically, pull the plug, they send the email. And so what I've seen that happen is that, agents and lenders many times, particularly agents, don't have secure accounts. You don't have multi-factor authentication on your emails. And so there's so many emails, so many different things. Those emails and contracts are already compromised way before the title companies already even received anything. And so a sophisticated party using AI or not using AI will know that there's a contract being circulated, the contract terms. They know all the emails. They know all the parties. They have your picture on your email. They can copy all of that, again, using AI, and they can come up with a legitimate email address or hack into your email address. And so phishing in, they're behind the scenes, so watching everything. And right before the closing, a week before the closing, and the right timing, lots of times on Friday afternoon, they will send emails that looks just like a legitimate email from the agent, from the lender, or from the title company, whether it's hacked into your email address, or it could look very similar, and they'll, we were talking about this, Deanna, I think before the podcast this morning, when email, or maybe it was Michelle, sorry, I think it was different people. One email, one full email address, and one little character could be different. Rather than using an A in an email address, you could use some alpha, or you can use different, not a numerical number or something that looks like an A. And looking at it, it would look identical. You would never suspect anything because the rest of the email, the rest of the body looks good. And so at the right opportune time, and these guys are sophisticated fraudsters, they send an email, right time, unsuspectingly, and somebody's going to jump on it. Right. And so that's kind of a perfect phishing example, whether it's a website, whether it's hacked, that somebody's going to follow and be on your computer, on your phone, and be able to access or send impersonating emails that looks either the same or very similar.
So are there security measures that we can put in place for our emails to make sure we're not subject to being phished?
Two simple things. One is do multi-factor authentication, right? Passwords should be different, or you should change passwords regularly. You should also, every once in a while, we do a whole lot of stuff on the title company, different people's emails, but you sometimes can just do kind of a hard, log out for all your devices and require everybody to log back in. So if anybody's logged in on one device, that shuts them out with a new password. Multi-factor authentication, where you have to have something, password and your phone digit, and that's a way it also can help. The third thing, think is you can install, and we have that on most of our, or all of our computers, phones and computers, different software that just works in the background just to see if there's any, phishing software, anything that's already on there that you may not know that's on your phone or on your computer that can help detect and erase that.
So like an anti-phishing software.
Yes. Kind of like, antivirus, but it's anti-phishing, some type of malfeasance software. And a lot of that's free. Some is, a little bit of money, but it's not expensive. And that's something that you have to do.
Well, even when you're saying that, like, you have to be really careful on the links that you're clicking to do something to protect yourself,
That start installing automatically.
We click. I mean, it's frustrating for us as a title company with lenders and everybody else. They say, hey, click here to access your loan docs. I mean, you have no idea if it's good or not. And so everybody's kind of trained in what to look for, what not to look for. If you have a question, you don't click, and you call the lender. Are we expecting this, expecting that? But it looks legitimate. You have no idea everything, but that we have so many different just clickable hyperlinks. That's how we operate, kind of unfortunately today. But you click the wrong link, and it takes down your computer and your network and a bunch of other folks in your industry or in your company.
So, and tell me this, and you're not a banker, so you might not know, but we ran into this recently with my parents. The difference between a wire transfer and an ACH, and are they both protected the same way? When you're saying you might have half a day or a day, do they come with the same protection?
Sure. A wire transfer, ACH transfer, and there's other real-time transfers like Zelle, and those are all different. An ACH transfer is not a wire transfer. An ACH transfer is you can generally, and I'm not a banker, so don't hold me to, but ACH transfer generally, it's kind of like a check, right? You can kind of cancel or remove that or bring it back after a little bit, once ACH transfer has either been sent or received. So for a title company, we don't like ACH transfers, and we can't use it because once we receive it, it could actually be, withdrawn 7 days later. So we have ACH blocks on our side. Most people don't have ACH tracks on their stuff.
Gotcha.
Wire's different. Is once we send the wire, it's done, and it's very hard to get that back.
Okay, that makes sense. Tell me when we get to go. I know that for them, it costs them money to send a wire, but it doesn't cost them for an ACH. So they're like, well, can't we just ACH it? And I'm like, I don't know if it's protected the same way.
Yeah, no, wire is actually ACH is a little more protected because it's just a different type of transaction. It's kind of like writing a check electronically, right? And so if something bounces, that's why on the receiving side, title companies, other folks don't like ACH because it can bounce just kind of like a check. It's zero or typically inexpensive compared to wire, but it's not real funds for a while. So for a legitimate transaction, particularly title company, we cannot accept it. We're not allowed to accept it, nor do we want to. And so sometimes somebody sends us ACH transfer, it gets rejected. And sometimes it takes a couple of days also to get that back from the buyer. That's actually a good point. Tell your buyer if they're sending wire, and we do not send an ACH transfer, send a wire instruction or a wire, because sometimes depending on their bank, if they send an ACH transfer, it might take them a week for that money to get back to them. And so if you're closing tomorrow and you see ACH transfer, we might have to push that closing week because on their end, they don't get that money back to send the wire to us a week later, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's on the buyer side, so wire, I understand people not wanting to spend $15, $20, $25 on wire. That's okay. You can send us a cashier's check. We have to get that really 1 or 2 days in advance so we can, there's, fraudulent cashier checks. We have to be able to call the bank and verify that. Many times it takes 1 or 2 days to do that. Many banks don't verify that. So there's problems whether it's a cashier check or wire. Most people are doing wires, but that's what we like. We talked about the buyer wire fraud. On the seller wire fraud, just as somebody's giving us money, we have to give other people money, and particularly the sellers at the closing, after it closes some funds. And so how do we verify and know that's the right amount? We're very protective of that. We like to have wire instructions in person. There are different ways we can get secure wire instructions from the seller. If anything's given to us by phone or email, we do different third-party wire verifications on our side to make sure that it's the right account. If nothing, something smells bad, something doesn't look right, we do extra steps to call, verify, do all those different things. Because if we send the wire to the wrong spot, we're screwed as well. And so, it's always frustrating because we always try to do extra callbacks to the seller. They're frustrated that we're calling back. We're just trying to make sure that we're selling and giving it to the right person. Because we're saying,
ask that. So if I was wondering if frustration might be a red flag that they're not legit, but you're saying that sometimes even legit sellers.
most of the frustration legit sellers. But again, on our side, we're just doing our job. We don't want to send the money to the wrong person. And so we're just doing all the checks and dot the I's, cross the T's, that is going to the right account and the right person, and everything sounds good. So we do get that frustrating. I understand, but again, we're just trying to make sure it's going to the right account.
Yeah.
Then once we send the wire, we can send wires late. Our banks, we are able to do, we receive money, we can send money, pretty much immediately. When the seller might get the money is dependent upon their bank. So many times we send money in the afternoon, the recipient may not get to the next day. It's going to an investment account. It might take a day or two on that. And so we get a lot of angry, frustrated sellers saying, where's my money? Where's my money? And it's out of our bank. It just takes 1 or 2 days for their bank to process or to confirm the receipt.
Okay.
Not saying that it's a loss. It's just depending on the bank. And lots of times we can tell them, well, this is your bank. It's going to take another day or two, or depending on what bank you use, you can get it this afternoon and use it tomorrow morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, they have the show like Catfish and things like that, came out, and it gave people awareness of these things of like, you might not be talking to who you think you're actually talking to. And so it's just wild to see that it's gotten to the point of real estate transactions, not just dating world, but, now it's all about money and people taking advantage of others. And the other thing too is, have you ever heard of Ryan Montgomery? Have you ever seen his stuff?
Not necessarily, no.
No. Have you ever heard of him?
I don't think so.
So he is like a good hacker. And so he'll put out stuff on TikTok and Instagram and X of like things that people should be aware of that they could be looking out for, like just like you're doing, talking to us and educating us. But it's also Wi-Fi networks. Like there are devices that you can buy on just on Amazon or something like that, that people can just drive around and hack into your Wi-Fi network. So is there any protections that we should be taking as business owners to protect our Wi-Fi network?
Great question. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, if you thought about all the bad things that could happen to you all day long, you'd live in fear. And so whether it's ignorance is bliss, I don't know. And so I think there are, low hanging fruit that you can do, whether it's for wire fraud, whether it's passwords, two-factor authentication. There are multiple different things you can do. And at some point you just have to move on, I think. Otherwise, somebody, walks right by you and they have a little scanner and your chips on your credit card saying grab your credit cards, right? I mean, do you not go anywhere for fear of somebody stealing your credit card? Do you have like a little magnetic case or different wallets that help protect your credit cards they have out there? And those are simple things that you can do. But at the same time, you can't live in fear.
100%.
And so it's just a balance for your Wi-Fi. I think having again that password that changes every once in a while, having an IT expert come in. We have our own IT. Somebody checks our systems all the time, but your network, having somebody come in and just make sure that, again, I'm not an IT expert, that you have the different firewalls, other things in there to make sure that you're the reasonable efforts you have to do for your protection of your network.
Absolutely.
And I think awareness, just people knowing that it for sure is a real thing. I have a friend who I didn't meet her till afterwards. I wasn't her agent by any means. I didn't even know her when it happened to her. But her and her husband were affected by it. They wired money thinking they were sending it to title, and it was a large transaction, and it just put them in a downward spiral for forever. And it was like in some other country somewhere they never got it back, and it ruined the whole deal. And she was still trying to recover emotionally and mentally from what had happened.
And in those instances, no fault of the agent or the lender or the title company, everybody looks bad,
Right.
for no fault of anybody. And so some of those things that y'all can do, we can do, everybody can, for awareness, awareness is a lot of it. Because again, those instances, that person lost a lot of money, never get back. And there's a, bad taste in the mouth for the real estate process, the title process, the agent process, everybody, right? And nobody can recover from that.
Right.
Going back to your Tesia about networks, I'm not necessarily too concerned about my own network. I am concerned about whenever I go to a hotel, am I using the hotel?
Exactly.
I don't. I mean, I use my hotspot. If I do use hotel Wi-Fi, I'm not going to, bank account or any other kind of confidential stuff.
Or like when you're meeting people, like hopping on like the Starbucks,
Right.
like a coffee shop.
I mean, everybody else is around there, right?
Yeah.
Or it's already been previously hacked. And so that's something simple. Again, other people's networks, not necessarily my own network.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you are just so like passionate about helping agents, helping your community. And so you're really big on education and helping others. Like, do you have any upcoming classes like for realtors or the public to become more aware about this stuff?
So I'm happy I teach a bunch of CE classes for credit. Thank you. I think we go above and beyond on helping the community, helping agents, helping other folks learn what they can and can't do. I taught 3 different CE classes this week, so I'm a little tired on that. Different city. I think 4 different CE classes in 4 different cities. We do stuff kind of for individual broker groups as well as some different classes. I don't know if we have anything in July. We had 2 different or 3 different June classes. I'm going to get back to you on that because I don't know what we have coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Is there a place where we can go and see when do y'all have a calendar or anything?
I don't have an internal calendar or external calendar that people, although we have thought about that and might need to investigate that a little bit. We generally send emails a few weeks or a month in advance.
So make sure we're registered.
Yes, ma'am. And so, but we have CE at bluebonnetabstract.com. That's something that we send out kind of monthly or every other week, upcoming CE events or upcoming events that we do have. And that's generally what we've done, but we might look into that CE calendar in the future. Because that is a big part of who we are, helping the community, giving awareness, teaching, and just being involved in communities and helping people out.
Absolutely. And so if people wanted to reach out to you or have any questions, is there a best website or anything?
Closeofblue.com is kind of our alias website is Bluebonnet Abstract, but closeofblue.com is one way you can kind of get a hold of us. Our number is 979-353-2553. Any of our folks can help you out. And if there's something that me as a lawyer, my partner, Clint Colby with Colby Nelson Law can help out, we're happy to help out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on with us, Shane.
Thanks, Tesia. Thanks, Deanna, so much. And let me know how I can help out next time.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions for us, or we can put you in contact with somebody that can help you with your situation, you can find us at texastrioteam.com. Take care and keep living your best life.